WBC announced an 80-20 split if the deal between Tyson Fury and Dillian was to go to purse bids. I just want to get your take on seeing such a large split in favour of Tyson.
I'm not sure. I don't know if that's truthful or not, because what you see on the net and what you actually hear and what's actually going on is two different things. I'm not even sure if I have the real information either. Just from the topics and discussions I've had with a few people, and one being yesterday, I heard that's not the case. I did think it was a bit unfair, to be honest, anyway, because if we're going by their guidelines, as a mandatory, it's up to 30%, and as the WBC interim champion, it's up to 45 to up to 55%. And when you take into account Dillian is someone who is a pay-per-view fighter, he does good numbers. He sells out the O2 on more than a few occasions. So that would suggest he does quite a few tickets and he's got a good fan base. So all of that into account, you'd want to take that.
And those are the words of Big Dean Whyte, the brother of Dillian Whyte. And he had that to say concerning his brother and Tyson, the Gypsy King Fury. Let me counterpunch. This is a different perspective from Dean, because he's like, well, we don't really know about the 80-20. That's what you hear on the internet. We don't know how much of that is true. We don't know. And he was like, I don't think I even know. So the different perspective is the reality of not knowing everything that's going on, and him speaking highly of his brother about selling tickets, about being a UK star, about his overall marquee value on how he sells tickets and how popular he is as a fighter. Dillian Whyte has his own following. Tyson Fury is a guy that basically became famous elsewhere, okay? Which is nothing wrong with that. It's basically Tyson Fury led or followed the footsteps behind Lennox Lewis more than any other British fighter that I could see. And that's actually successful. He just didn't do or fight the same person. Lennox Lewis fought many, many people, but I feel that if we don't know everything, we need to get down to the nitty gritty to find out what's going on with Dillian Whyte. Or if they don't know what the true split is, I guess the only thing that we could do is wait for the purse bid. I think the purse bid would be the best option for Dillian Whyte, because what the WBC said versus, what's really going on, who knows? But I will tell you this. Dean Whyte might not know, but there's a difference between knowing and believing. And I believe that if the WBC or Mauricio Suleiman says, hey, it's 20%, that's exactly what it is, because he's being difficult, because we've heard that type of thing come from Mauricio before. A couple years ago when Dillian Whyte was complaining to the public about the WBC dragging their name and their sanctioning body through the mud, which he should have been, because he's that guy that deserves his shot, and he never got it, and he still hasn't got it, and it's 2022, right? So, you're looking at it like, all right, well, we've heard Mauricio say that before. We've heard him talk about Dillian Whyte and how he personally doesn't like the decisions that Dillian Whyte chose to do. His act of diplomacy wasn't up to par. Okay. See, a lot of times, and that's my major question about Dillian Whyte. At what point do you complain about a sanctioning body, right? Or what a sanctioning body's not doing that you're an interim champion of? At what point will that sanctioning body turn around and look at you as a connection or an extension of that sanctioning body and say like, hey, what are you really doing? You know what I mean? Because it's like this. It's almost like working at a job, right? And you're always complaining about the job. but oh, yet you are, one of the senior managers or supervisors. You know what I mean? Because at one point, like, okay, well, why don't you go somewhere else? Well, why don't you go somewhere else if it's that bad? So that's another factor you have to really look at when you're dealing with, the split. But I do agree with Dean. It is unfair, but I mean, it's to the point again. It's unfair to Dillian Whyte. However, if that's the case, which I believe that's the case, it's the 2080. But the purse bid, anybody could bid on that fight. So anybody could bid rights to that fight. And then the networks have a lot to do with, the supremacy of where it's going to be, So if it's Matchroom, with the zone, that's a totally different thing versus ESPN, So Frank Warren and Bob Arum has to put their heads together and their pocketbooks to make that bid worth a while, because it's, the 11th is next week. So by the 11th, if these guys haven't put their money together, somebody else could outbid them. So, but again, Dean, questions that he doesn't know what's real or not. A lot of times we don't know. Look what happened last year with Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury. We thought Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua was going to fight for the longest until they wouldn't. And it came all the way up until the evidence just was peaking that the money was there and this, that, and the other. And Tyson Fury made his announcement and all this shit. And then guess what? Boom. Arbitration settled. He has to fight Deontay Wilder anyway. So we will see really what's going on in the few weeks. But you guys tell me what you think of Dean Whyte's take on his brother, Dillian, the Body Snatcher Whyte, and Tyson, the Gypsy King Fury. Of course, please subscribe. And you guys been Counterpunched. Peace.